Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, no matter what time of day it is when you're tuning us in. Welcome to another episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network. This is presented every week by CVC Success Group. And what we'd love to do is bring you new ideas, processes, concepts, and we'd love to have guests that can also add to this. Over the years, we've had a lot of fantastic guests on here. And the gentleman we're having today, he's been on before with us some years ago, and his name is Randy Pennington. Cheryl and I got to know Randy some years ago. We were in a coaching group called the UBS Ultimate Business Summit Group, and we got together every month and got to hear Randy, Larry Winget, Scott McCain. We also had an annual meeting somewhere, usually in Arizona or in Texas. We went to, but we all got together, had a fantastic time. And Randy, to give you a little bit of background, Randy owns a company called the Pennington Group, and he's a leading expert. He's an authority on culture. That's a big buzzword out there: change, leadership, and strategy. He's also written some fantastic books. He's an award-winning author, and his clients include some of the country's best known companies, right? Government agencies, not-for-profits, and university. So he's in a high demand. Okay. He's up there in age like us, but hey, he still wants to keep doing what he's doing. I don't think Randy will ever retire. He'll keep by like me and Cheryl. He'll just keep going. But recently, Randy launched something he called the whole package. And I saw him post this on social media and took a look at it. And it's like, hey, this is really interesting stuff. It's a whole package leadership study in the spring of 2025 is when he did this. And these results shine light on what it takes to be a leader, and for a leader to have an enduring impact on followers. And most important, why that is so important for every organization. Often they say that people don't quit a job, they quit the leadership. They quit the leadership. They're just not getting what they need. And one of the areas that if you're going to be successful in any of your endeavors, you're going to be successful not only as a manager, but as a parent, as a child, looking after your parents, no matter what it is. You have to be a leader in this world. So, Randy, appreciate you taking the time out today and joining us, my friend.
My pleasure, Jerry and Cheryl. It's always great to be with you. Josh, nice to meet you for the first time, although I've seen you. I lurk and watch you guys on a regular basis just to check and make sure that everything is still going well and that you're still out there doing great work, and you are. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks so much.
Yeah, and sometimes you coming through Charlotte, and hey, you're passing through my town. Sometimes I'm going through DFW because you live in Dallas.
That's right. Yeah.
So, well, let's get started here, Randy, and let's start back at the beginning. Tell us about this study. Why did you decide to do this, and how extensive is it?
Well, it's a great question, Jerry. Thanks for asking. Let's start with what started it. Believe it or not, like a lot of good business ideas, it started off with someone saying, I need your help on something. There are people out there who broker services like mine and yours and what have you. And this lady came to me that I'd worked with before and said, I want to submit you as a coach for a CFO of an international company, big company. And I said, great. And she goes, now, I think you're the most qualified and you're least likely to get the job. So now she has my attention, right? And I said, so tell me why. And she said, because coaches at this level, at your level, they typically have a model that they go with, and then they just plug people into the model. And Jerry and Cheryl, from the UBS days, that's never been our style. The success of UBS is we took from people where they are, and then we figured out where they needed to go, which is always how we've operated. I've operated my entire career. But she said, if you have a model, it will help. So I thought, okay, what would I call that model? And I thought, well, that leader is somebody who's the whole package. Now, let me ask you all a question. Have you ever worked with someone that you looked and said, that leader is the whole package?
Never have, Randy, not in my entire career. Cheryl, what about you?
Nobody. I've worked with a few that are, they're good, but they don't have a couple chapters are missing.
Right.
What about you, Josh?
Well, Cheryl, I thought that was a nice way of saying they're missing a few cards of a full deck.
So let me kind of dial it back a little bit and said, are there someone that are so exceptional that you would look up to them, that you would volunteer to work for or with again?
My old service manager was great at culture. Troy, he was great. He was phenomenal.
Yeah, I can't think of one for myself. I was
Right.
never.
So, by the way, interesting enough, so one piece of the study is we asked people how many of these folks had they had. 8% of respondents said none, never, none. They said it's always, Josh, it was a nice way of saying it, one or two cards short of a full deck. Some of them said they're half a deck short of a full deck. But most people, almost 60% of the people, have had 5 or less in their entire career. Most people have had 1 to 3. So these people are very rare. But we went out with a study based on that, and we asked people, tell us about a leader who had a great impact on you. And we did this study, Jerry, standard-wise, at a level it's statistically valid across demographic groups, age, gender, nationality, ethnicity, education level, you name it. We just about have it right now. And it's valid at a 3% margin of error. So if you watch the political polls, you'll see that margin of error, and they'll usually say 3, 4, or 5%. And so we did ours originally at 3%. A second piece is done at 4%, highly valid with a 95% reliability, which basically says 95% of the time, 97% of the people will say this is how they are. So I feel very confident that it's valid. So I go back to that, and I built this model, and you all know me, I'm pretty curious about stuff. So I said, this is great. Is it true? And so then we launched the study to do that. And that's what led to it. We've now done 2 phases around this study that are included in the reports. I'm working on, and I'll tell you a little bit about it later, the 3rd phase of the study that I'm playing with right now. But that's how we got to this. And the title on the report, which you've read, Jerry, and people can download, and I know you're going to share that later, says this is the information that sort of redefines what it takes to be an exceptional leader.
Okay. So, Cheryl, what question would you have for Randy at this point?
Okay, so what did you learn about exceptional leaders from your study, and what separates the very best leaders from all the others?
Well, that was a surprising thing, Cheryl, what we learned about exceptional leaders. The first thing we learned is that most of what we teach as leadership is considered a baseline expectation. We teach in our leadership programs, and I teach that you do the same. We talk about it's important to have subject matter expertise. And if you think about someone that owns a business, they expect you to be able to do the job. They expect you to be able to jump in. They expect you, if you're working in chimney work, they expect you to be able to do the work just as well as anybody else. So subject matter expertise is there. Creating vision. And Jerry, I've heard you talk about this before, about the importance of vision and strategic thinking, and obviously delivering results and execution and communication skills and even emotional intelligence. Those are all the things that we teach. about leadership. Cheryl, when you do assessments, I know that one of the assessments you do is not just behavior styles, you do an emotional intelligence assessment as well. And the study says those are all important, but they're baseline. That makes you a good leader, but it doesn't make you memorable. It doesn't make you that exceptional leader. And we define the whole package as someone who is not perfect, but has all of the traits that would make you want to work with them. It's that leader people want to follow. So all those things that we typically teach are baseline. The difference comes down to three broad areas. And the very first one is that we called it principled character. And the principled character piece deals with not just ethics and integrity, but it also is that very unique balance between ego, which we all have, right? Especially if you're a business owner, you've got a bit of an ego. At the same time, to be memorable as a leader, we've got to have humility to go along with that. So it's that principled character. The second piece that sets people apart is authentic presence. Now, here's the interesting part, Jerry. One of the things that people told us is presence isn't about looking good, which is really good for you and me. Looking the part might get you the job, but it doesn't make you memorable as a leader. It's being around people, being connected to people, admitting when you make mistakes. It's that authentic presence that gets people. And the third thing that showed up in the study is getting results through people. Every business, we all want to get results, but we don't want to leave roadkill as we're going through that. That doesn't make you memorable as a leader. So those are the baseline things, but those three areas really stood out as the differentiating factors and what makes someone truly memorable as a leader. The person that you look back on, 5, 10, 20 years later and say, that person still has an influence on me.
Yeah. One of the things that when we talk leadership, I think one of the things that comes to mind is Dwight D. Eisenhower quote about leadership is the ability to get people to do things because they want to, not because you're forced into it. And this is a man that led people onto the beaches of Normandy in World War II. And you look at it, and generals and presidents and all this stuff of how they got these tremendous followings. So, Josh, what about you? What would you ask Randy this morning?
Well, I have a couple, and from your study, caring is a core competency. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. That was one of the surprises of the study. Not the only surprise, but it was one of them. As part of this, we asked people, after they described these leaders, we asked them to evaluate and rate a number of different areas on how important will it be for leadership in the future. And we ask all kinds of things: getting results, dealing with change, dealing with technology, keeping our humanity when AI is coming on. How do we keep human in the business with AI? We ask about climate change. We ask about immigration and population migration is the way we phrased it. We ask about, you name it, right? Like 20 different things we ask it. And the top two were very close, but the top one, it was literally hundredths of a point, is that the best leaders going forward will provide physical, emotional, and mental health and safety.
Yeah, I've seen a push among other business owners to be fit, to be physically fit as part of their leadership. Working out. I personally do jujitsu now. I have a good friend who owns a business. He, he does jiu-jitsu, and he's training for a marathon too. And
so the physical piece is becoming more important, but the mental and emotional and preventing burnout and dealing with the stress of the business, people are telling us that's important, and it's one of the most important challenges. Mm-hmm. And here was an interesting piece of this, Josh. That held true across every age demographic. So if you're in the 18 to 24 group, it held true. But if you're in the 65 and older group, it also held true.
Yeah, because I'm used to, people Jerry's age who grew up with, and I grew up with a tough father who, just bear your feelings, get the job done. It doesn't matter that you're going through a divorce or that your wife is sick. You gotta, get through the job. And the reality is, we're still humans, and, that stuff carries over.
Yeah, I remember when you said that, Josh, years ago before I got into the consulting and speaking and coaching world, I was a hospital administrator. And I had a team, I had 8 departments that reported to me directly, plus a lot of other responsibility. And I was going through a divorce at the time. And I'll never forget, one of my department heads came to me, and I was a young guy, right? And she closed the door and said, "Hey, look, everybody that reports to you, we all met, and I was voted the one to come have this conversation." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "We all know." And I was like, "We all know what?" She goes, "We all know that you're getting a divorce. We know that it's messing with your mind a little bit. And I was sit here to ask, when are you going to get over it and get back to work? Because we're all tired of covering for you."
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. That was a little bit of hard love leadership there, wasn't it?
It was, but it was sort of that, Josh, as you mentioned, it's like, just get over it, right? Just get over it.
Well, yeah, as I said, it was at some point, some people can't get over it, right? And it just carries on and on and on and on.
And the pervasiveness of that response kind of led me to believe that, it's not that folks that are our age, Jerry's and Cheryl's and my age, it's not that we don't care about that simply because we say get through it. We just never thought we had the right to say anything about it. And this generation that's coming into the workplace now, the younger millennials and the Gen Zs, they believe they have the right to voice what we've all felt forever. And that's the change.
Who gave them that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's their parents, it's the school. I mean, our buddy Larry Winget said, wrote the book, "Your Kids Are Your Own Damn Fault." And that's true. I mean, we created the environment for that. And we can say that's less healthy or more healthy. And I know there's a debate on both sides, but it is a very real issue for leaders who really want to kind of elevate themselves into that exceptional category. And the reason why that exceptional category is there. So, think of that truly exceptional leader. Let me ask you some questions. Does that person expect less of you or more of you?
Should expect more.
Right.
Yeah, more.
Yeah. And were you less likely or more likely to do everything in your power to meet or exceed those expectations?
Certainly. I didn't want to get my ass chewed.
Right. And if that person said, "Hey, I need you to change," did you resist change openly, or did you get on with changing?
Of course, change is difficult. We all know that. Change is always difficult.
But you did it, didn't you, Jerry?
Had to do it.
Yeah, you had to do it. Now, think of that person. Does that person, that best leader you've ever had, does that person still influence you at some level today?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And so that's influence, right? Leadership is about influence. We know that. So that's influence. the ability to influence someone even when you're not around. And the results of the study reinforce everything you just said, Jerry, that people say, decades later, they still influence me.
Yeah.
And now think about someone in a service business. Are you around your team members every day? Probably not, right? They're out, they're making service calls. They decide at any point in time whether they're going to do what you need them to do to build your business and build your brand or not. They decided they're going to cut corners or not. And that exceptional leader has the ability to influence that person even when they're not around.
Yeah, because I think a lot of this, they just don't want to disappoint them.
Well, it's most of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's most of it. Absolutely. So you go back to that point, Josh, of, when I say caring is a core competency, what people are really telling us is, if I know that you care about me, I will care about the business. I will care about what's going on. If I don't believe you care about me, which they define as physical, mental, and emotional health, if I don't believe you care about me, I'll do at best maybe a little more, but in some cases, I'll do just the minimum to get by.
Actually, I know a great case study for that. I know a really good case study for that, because I know where the employees, there was a change of ownership and the employees have revolted for that reason.
So, Randy, let me ask you this. What about the things that we think are important? What did this study reveal about things that we think are important, but really aren't that important? Did you get any findings on that?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we did, Jerry. Glad you asked. First thing is, charisma and executive polish are highly overrated.
Really?
Yeah, they're seen as a nice to have, but not essential if you want to be viewed as a truly exceptional leader. It's a nice to have, don't get me wrong, right? It's nice to have. And it might help you get the job, but it won't help you make your mark as a memorable leader. People prefer that you be authentic and emotionally present more than that you have executive polish or charisma. Now, authenticity is one of those words that everybody talks about that, we've heard it said before, right? Oh, I'm being authentic. No, you're just being a jerk, right? Authentic doesn't mean you get to be a jerk. It just means they want to be able to see you. So I'll give you a specific example. I'm working with a client right now. It's not in the services industry. I'm not going to tell you the name because you might have heard of the company. But the CEO called me about a month ago and said, I'm having a problem. My team is revolting. And I started talking to the team. And the team said, this guy is demanding. He's, he never admits that he's wrong. It's our fault if he makes, mistakes happen. It's always it's everything around that. Now, charisma wise, this person's a big personality, looks good, looks the part, and his team said, I wish he would just say, hey, I want you all to know that I want you to succeed. I know I've made mistakes. I'm trying to get better, and we need to get better together. Just have an honest human conversation with us. And he told me recently that he did that. And he said one of the people who I was worried about how they came up and shook my hand afterwards and said thank you.
Fantastic.
So that's one of the things that we learned, that, that here's another one that is going to be a bit of a dagger. Status and title don't mean much to the younger generation.
Okay.
They don't care. I mean, they obviously care if you're the owner of a business or you're the general manager or you're the, I mean, they know they have to follow you. They have to do what you said. But what they've said is that is not important in who we think of as an exceptional leader. I'll do what you tell me to do because you're my boss, but I won't necessarily give you that extra discretion effort.
Okay.
So look at again. So if they don't look at boss, who do they look at?
They're going to look at their coworkers.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, what we found is if you're under age 35, think of the percentage of people under age 35 in the workforce today, right? That's becoming the majority because us baby boomers are retiring. You okay there, Josh?
Yeah.
But us baby boomers are retiring, right? Sooner or later, we're the three of us are the exception here. When you ask somebody under 35, tell me about a person who has meant a great deal to you as a leader, it's statistically higher chance that they're going to say it's a teacher, it's a coach, or it's a family member. Not a boss, not a supervisor, not a mid-manager, not a CEO. It's a teacher, it's a mentor, it's a family member, a coach. Now, think about that. Think about your very best teacher that you had in high school.
Okay.
How did that person approach you? Did they treat you like they were your supervisor?
No, they treated me like an adult. They didn't treat me as a kid's what I remember.
Yeah. How about you, Cheryl?
We were treated as adults.
Right.
At a young age.
Yeah, but they tended to encourage you more than just beat on you, right? They tend to, think about how teachers operate with kids today. They're really there to uplift you and encourage you, not to punish you. Now, they will punish you if you need to, and the punishment varies. In our day, it was, go to the principal's office and bend over because you were getting some licks. Or in playing sports, that means that many more laps around the top of the gym. But there's still some consequences. But now think about how a lot of supervisors treat people. And if you're dealing with a younger workforce and you want them to engage with you, they're not comparing you against the best supervisor they've ever had. They're comparing you against Mrs. Jones, who was my 10th grade English teacher, who made me feel like I could accomplish anything.
Okay.
That's, we can debate, is that right or wrong? I don't know. It just is, right? It just is. It's what the younger. So that's another thing. The final thing that they've told us that's not important is age and experience alone doesn't make you memorable as a leader. It's a little bit of a change, right?
Okay.
We were all taught respect your elders. Now, they will respect us because of our age. They acknowledge their age, but they don't necessarily listen to us because of our age.
Interesting.
So again, that's something from a generational piece that was somewhat surprised me a little bit.
Gotcha. So Cheryl, what'll be your next question for Randy?
Okay, well, you're talking about some things there, but if you're looking at age, race, gender, are there differences that cause us to evaluate exceptional leaders differently?
Yes, Cheryl, great question. The answer is yes, and it's one that I was very interested in because we hear a lot, especially around gender, right or wrong, diversity, equity and inclusion are in the news these days. They have been since the new presidential administration. There are people who think it's absolutely critical. There are people who think it's not. Everybody's concerned about age and what have you. What we found is there are differences in experience, but not as many differences in what's important. So, for example, when you ask men, tell me about that leader who is exceptional that you've worked for, they are more likely to say someone in the corporate world. Could be a middle manager, could be executive, could be someone like that. When you ask women that, females that, their leader who meant a lot to them is more likely to be not a work person. It's more likely to be a female, someone, a teacher, someone in their family. It's more likely to be a non-work person. Now, part of that, I think we can go back to be an interesting follow-up. Is that because traditionally females don't have access in the corporate world? That could be part of it. Part of it, it could be the socialization aspect of it. But the sources of leadership inspiration are different. But what they tell us, those, principled character, results through people, all those things still show up. Now, there's some also differences in ethnicity a little bit. If you are African American or Black, that group placed a higher level of importance on the leader's ability to command the room and command attention than whites did. Again, we can speculate why, but sociologically, right, if you look back, who are the people in the Black community that are revered as leaders?
That's a good question. You think of Obama, you think of different people, but really, I can't think of who comes to light in that, Randy.
Well, I mean, Obama comes to light, Martin Luther King Jr. comes to light. You think in local communities, it's very often traditionally, it's less that way now, but traditionally, pastors were there. You think about that, that leader who, a strong family member, a mother, an aunt, or a grandmother, or someone like that. But there are people who had this big presence in lives, and again, that was one of the interesting statistics of who are we evaluated against, and the Asian population tended to place a little higher value, not statistically significant, but enough to notice, on intellect and presence, authority figure. And that was in the Asian population. So, Cheryl, to your question, there are little interesting nuanced differences. When we ask people how important is the ability for a leader to lead change, which we know, Jerry, right, is a big deal in business today. You have to be able to change.
Correct. Change is difficult.
Right. And if you're an hourly employee, it's less important in how you view a leader's effectiveness. If you're a CEO or an owner, it was statistically more important for them, right? So perspective matters in all of this.
Okay. So, Josh, what about you? What would you ask Randy next?
Okay. Well, I want to tie a couple things together from what I've read of Randy's.
Okay.
His coyote versus the dodo.
Right.
And which kind of goes to Who Moved My Cheese, that book, that little short read. And then one thing that I struggled with was, and as Jerry will tell you, I wrote thousands of SOPs to the nth degree, and made it in what I thought, and Jerry, hopefully Jerry agrees, easy to eat format. And then that's going to lead into because I did that, as Jerry will tell you, I used to get terribly frustrated when people would interrupt me. So I went through the empowerment route, which is what is in your study here, talking about empowerment. And I did that, to empower people to make the right decisions, but they still kept, they wouldn't, like we gave them access to Jerry's education platform, all sorts of SOPs, manuals. And, I felt like it was, a lot of them were like the dodo and they just didn't want to change, even though I had, all that available to them and said, hey, here's what you have to do in order to exceed.
Yeah, great comment. And I'm going to hit both of them. Josh, as you were talking, I was reminded of a statement that I used to hear my father say occasionally. And he said, you can buy them books and you can send them to school, and that doesn't mean they won't eat the covers. and that's true. Yeah, we can give them the tools, we can create the process, and it doesn't mean that they're going to follow them. And it comes back to, and I'll tie it back to the study. First off, we know that exceptional leaders, there's some patience required there. And so you've got to be able to be patient. I think one of the first distinction is when they're not following those SOPs, when they're not doing those things. Is it a won't do problem or a can't do problem? Because if it's a can't do problem, all right, that's a tool there they need. There's, it's like, I'd like to be able to fix this, but I have to go to Home Depot to buy the part. Okay, yeah. That's a tool problem. I can't follow the SOP because I don't have the right tool, or I don't have the right training. So can't do problems, and then there's won't do problems. And in the won't do, that typically comes down to where a leadership piece has an impact. And you mentioned empowerment, and I think it's really critical for leaders to understand what empowerment means. Empowerment is not the same as abdication. So imagine for a moment that we're all the parents of a 10-year-old daughter.
I don't have to imagine that, by the way.
You have a 10-year-old daughter?
A 12-year-old.
12-year-old daughter. So your 12-year-old daughter comes home to you tonight and says, Dad, a 17-year-old boy down the street would like to know if I can go to the concert with him tonight in his new van.
Jerry already knows my response.
Right? Now, Josh, you believe in empowerment. You told me you do. You said, I've gone the empowerment route, so I know you believe in empowerment. Would you empower your 12-year-old daughter to make that decision?
Oh, no, God, no.
No. Yeah. If it were me,
there would be a lot more carnage than that.
I'd be picking up the phone, calling the police and say, you know what, you get here quick, he might still be alive.
Yeah.
That sounds accurate.
Yeah. Now, on the other hand, by the time your daughter is 28, do you hope she can make that decision on her own?
I do.
So the question comes down to what happened between 12 and 28. And
matured.
Yeah, it's
hopefully.
Her maturity, it's experience, it's training, it's you giving her the boundaries. So let's bring it back to something more practical. Josh, your 12-year-old daughter comes home tonight. What's her name, by the way?
We call her B.
Okay, B comes home and says, Dad, my best friend from class who lives 2 doors down in the neighborhood wants to know if I can go to her house tonight. We're going to watch, I don't know, Frozen for the 1286th time.
Oh, you really do know my life.
Order pizza, thin crust, vegetarian, kind of whatever, Would you, after calling her friend's parents and making sure everything is okay, would you let your 10-year-old or 12-year-old daughter walk down the street on her own?
I'd kick her out the door.
Sure.
Put a foot in the back.
Now, some people would say, I'd let her walk alone, but I'd be standing out on the curb, like walking the dog or something, till I made sure she was in the house,
No,
right? It kind of depends on the neighborhood.
Yeah, no, we can free range this neighborhood.
Right. Yeah. So, if you can't free range your neighborhood, there's a little different. But either way, it means that empowerment, when we empower people as leaders, there's some things that we have to have. They have to have the tools and the training. They have to know what the boundaries are. They have to understand what the success looks like. And more important, they have to have that trust and freedom to fail in pursuit of the mission. So let's all think for a moment. Think of the most important lessons we've ever learned in our lives. How many of those came from failure?
Most of mine have.
Yeah.
In fact, Josh and I were talking, we had a discussion yesterday on that very subject.
It's the same way for me.
Okay.
I think it's the same way for all of us. And so
Absolutely.
empowerment, we can't abdicate. Obviously, as a business owner, I'm not going to let you fail at something that's going to get you killed.
Okay.
Right? Intentionally. I'm not going to go, yeah, I know that's probably going to get you killed, but if that's what you want to do, knock yourself out. We're not going to, nobody's going to do that. But we have to let people grow and learn. So it goes back to the coyote and the dodo, which is out of my book, Make Change Work. And here's what that metaphor really means. Dodo birds grew up in an environment where they never had to change. They were on the island of Mauritius, which is out in the middle of the Pacific somewhere. I've seen photos. It's apparently a beautiful place. But they had no natural predators. They're like a 3-foot high bird that walked around, and no natural predators, laid their eggs on the ground. And they were perfectly fine until the pirates showed up, or until the explorers showed up, or until the people in their ship showed up. And they showed up, came ashore, and saw 3-foot birds walking around after you've been on a ship. What do you think happened?
I'd be eating that thing.
Yeah. And so that's what they started to do. But that ultimately, because it turns out they didn't taste that good, so they stopped eating them. But here's what did happen. The rats came off the ship and ate the eggs. And so the dodo had no natural enemy, so it never learned to adapt. Coyotes, on the other hand, coyotes are everywhere. I live in a very urban area. I was out walking my dog the other day. There's a little coyote pup walking across the street from me, just trotting through my neighborhood. I think he was lost, and he wasn't aggressive. I think he was more scared of us than we were of him. But coyotes are everywhere. And that's because they see what happens around them, and they move quickly to change and adapt. And more and more today, we need to be more like coyotes and less like dodo birds, because stuff's out to get us.
And I'll just a follow-up. Can you get, for lack of a better word, the employees that are dodos that are happy with where they're at, what they're doing, mainly their pay level is, can you empower them to change? Or they basically, have they just,
maxed out, right?
Yeah. Are we basically extinct? Because I hear that a lot from a lot of clients, and even in my own experience, is intelligent people, capable people who just would not, they were dodos. They just wouldn't, like, hey, we'll give you more money if you sit here, read this manual, and pass a test. And they're just like, no.
That's a great question, Josh. And I think the answer is yes and no. I mean, there obviously are people who, in the right circumstance for a leader that they know wants to help them succeed, there will be people who rise to the occasion. But think about, let's go back to Jerry's example. Jerry, think about that teacher, that best teacher you ever had. Did you rise to the occasion to do great work?
As good as I was able to.
As good as you were able to. Were there people in your class who didn't?
Yes.
That's the way the workplace is. That's the way the world is. Now, for a leader, not everybody can be a star.
Okay.
Right? We know that. Not everyone can be a star. Even if if you had a team of all stars, one of them is still going to be better than the other. They're all stars, but they're better. So not everyone's going to be the absolute star. I think at one level, it's an expectation. There are minimum things that we have to do. And what we're looking for is a place where the stars want to congregate. That's the easiest way. And I'm also fully aware, I had again a conversation with a prospective client yesterday, and this client has a head of operations, and their response was, this head of operations has reached their level of competence. They can't get us where we need to go.
Yep. What got you here ain't going to get you there.
Right. And I said, so why are they still here? And they said, because we haven't found a replacement yet. And until we do, the mediocre, they're not bad, right? Terrible performers, they're just mediocre. They can't grow, they can't scale. And they said, until we find the next person, we don't have the bandwidth in our business to let somebody go. There's nobody to pick it up. So, I think that's the real piece that we all deal with.
Yeah.
You may have to put up with that mediocre employee, that poor performer that's disrupting. No, get rid of them. That's addition by subtraction.
And Randy, I've seen that happen where people have eliminated managers in their companies and has turned the company around tremendously in short order from getting the right people in. And it was in a bad situation to where bankruptcy was not far down the road, made the hard decisions, made the changes, and things are really booming for those people right now. It's just hard to make the change. But let me ask you this.
It is hard to make that change, but it's critical if you want your business to continue to grow.
Yes. Well, let me ask you this. Okay, you've gone through this study. You've looked at a lot of data. So what have people got to do differently in the future if they're going to own or operate a business? What does the future mean that they have to do?
Well, one of the first things that popped up is I don't think we do a great job of selecting leaders, whether it's supervisors or managers. Now, if you're the owner, I guess you could say I'm going to self-select out, but that's probably not going to happen. But, you are going to have supervisors and managers probably in your business. You're going to have crew leaders in your business. I think one of the first things is changing how we think about who we select. And if you think about who gets selected as the supervisor, how often do you see the best worker gets automatically promoted to being the supervisor?
That's becoming less and less common, I think, Randy. I think it's becoming much less common than it used to be.
Good.
It was an automatic move up into that position, and it's not anymore.
Good. Go ahead, Josh.
No, because when I was getting back treatments and I was talking to my doctor, I was like, how often does in an exact situation where the best doctor becomes the head of the department, but they suck at people and managing and things like that. And he says that happens all the time, that they're a phenomenal surgeon, but they just suck at everything else that someone in that department head should be.
So, I think, and both of those, Jerry, I agree. It's less than it was, but it's still more than it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
So first thing that I would do is, if I were going to start hiring new supervisors or new managers, we know what the technical expertise is. We know that. That's kind of a given in any business. But I'm going to go back and put a plug in here and say, every single person that's listening to this or watching this, you need to call and engage Cheryl to do a job analysis based upon leadership skills, which you can do, Cheryl, as part of your behavior styles and driving forces and emotional intelligence. Do that analysis. Don't just do the report, do the analysis first. What does the job tell us that it needs? And think of it this way, that job analysis that's going to focus on leadership is saying, if the job could talk, what would it tell us that it needs? I would go back and do that for every single job. I would then go to Cheryl and say, Cheryl, run me your profile on that. Help me figure out, how do I select for leadership potential based on what we know is important? So that's one of the very first things. So Cheryl, let me ask you, are there clients that you have that do that?
I have some that talk about it, if that's a good way to put it. It's a conversation, but I almost think some are afraid to dive into it because they might find out the right answers.
Well, and you're right. They might find out. They're certainly going to find out answers that are uncomfortable.
That's the ones I'm talking about.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Nothing really ever changes until we tell ourselves the truth.
But that takes back, where Jerry and you have always talked, change hurts.
Change hurts.
People just try to seem to dodge that bullet as long as they can. They try to change it just enough that it doesn't hurt.
And, I always go back to this kind of philosophy. Every business is perfectly organized and optimized to deliver exactly the results that it's delivering right now. So if you say, well, gee, my results suck. Okay, that's because your business is organized and optimized so that your results suck. If we can't grow, it's because your business is organized and optimized because it doesn't work for growth, doesn't work. And, if you want things to be better, they're going to have to be different. Difference is just another way of saying they're going to have to change.
Yeah. Well, Cheryl, what else would you ask Randy today?
Okay, we've had a lot of good knowledge. I have thoroughly enjoyed this, and your report goes even deeper. But for the listeners that we have sitting out there, tell me how this can affect them, just how they can use this information.
Again, great question. Let's go back to something that we talked about earlier. Most people, when you talk about exceptional leaders, have had fewer than a handful. And on the other hand, we know, as part of our follow-up study, we asked questions about how does that exceptional leader affect your happiness at work, your burnout, your productivity, your willingness to contribute to the culture, your willingness to change without resisting, all those things. And the numbers are 50% or higher, saying, if I have an exceptional leader, I'm more likely to accept change. I'm more likely to be accountable. I'm more likely to own my job. When we talk about accountability, Accountability from the leader is not a problem when we have ownership from the employee. If people own their job and own their results, I don't have to hold them accountable. They do well enough on their own around that.
And to quote Randy Pennington, for change to occur, the people need to be involved in the change.
Absolutely.
Not dictated that a change will occur.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it goes back to people support what they help create, and no one ever argues with their own ideas.
Yeah.
So getting people involved. By the way, if they are arguing with their own ideas, that's a mental health problem that's beyond your capacity to refer them to somebody else. But so, I mean, the first thing is, when we become great leaders, don't have some of the problems. It's not that they don't have any problem. They don't have some of the problems that the rest of them have. So that's the first thing. And we know that people will knock themselves out to work for a great leader. So, that's one of the ways this applies, is be a better leader. I mean, everything that we teach them about dealing with change, about leading change, about managing, those are all important, but they're multiplied when we're seen as great leaders. So that's the first piece of news and how it affects people. The other thing is, retention is still a job problem. It's still a problem for most of us. Being a great leader doesn't mean that I can't pay them fairly, but it does mean I get the benefit of the doubt when it's close. And that's kind of what we're looking at. Maybe the third thing about how we operate, again, is I go back to, how are you selecting people? How are you promoting people? How are you making sure that you're teaching, if principled character, which is integrity and trustworthiness, and if that's important, how are we evaluating those things when we select people? How are we organizing the work so that we can get people involved? To your point, Jerry, we can get them involved in change. I mean, I think you step back and look at it, and it has a lot of implications around everything in the business.
Okay. Sounds fantastic, brother. Well, I posted the link into the comments.
Good.
And I highly recommend that you go look at this study, okay? You go look at this study. There's a lot of work been put in here. And Randy, you've still got more work to do on this, I'm seeing, right?
Right. We're going to do 3 more papers on this. The first one is sort of first one is the sort of the macro findings. The second one is that I'm working on right now is really, what does it mean to be that leader? And then we're going to look at the big issues that are there. And then the fourth one is sort of the playbook for how you build that. And Doug is exactly right. Build people that'll help grow the business. You're exactly right, Doug.
Yeah, it is. So you'll know, Doug's dad was the company of the Little Giant Ladder Company. You remember the Little Giant? You remember the Little Giant?
I do.
That was his daddy that used to do the infomercials. He's written a really good book on that. I've got to know Doug some years ago. He's actually been a guest, but his dad was a phenomenal leader. In fact, Doug told us, me and Cheryl, there were things he never knew that his dad did until his dad passed away, and the things that he had done for his people that worked for him. He was a highly celebrated person out in Utah. Very, very unreal.
Well, and that, what you just described, Doug, about your dad is so true. It's, your dad was, Doug's father, Doug, I bet your dad was a great business guy.
He was.
Yeah. But he probably wasn't known. He wasn't remembered for being a great business guy. He was remembered, most important, for those little things he did that cared for people.
That's exactly right. He's known for business by the people that didn't know him, but the people that did know him and he worked for him, that was what he was remembered by. Well, Randy, I want to thank you for taking your time out of your day today to share this with it. Randy, like I said, excellent resource. Go take a look at this study, and hopefully anything else you would say to close this out today, Randy?
Well, I mean, this is a continual work in progress. And we've now started to look at this as a key driver in businesses. So we're moving forward with this. We're developing an assessment for leaders. We already have a 360 feedback mechanism that's in process. I'm looking at another assessment that's validated against this. And we're trying to get it down to like 10 or 12 questions that we can ask that give us a good picture about businesses. I think the world today needs better leaders, period. And, you know, there's a lot of people, we all talk about leadership. This is the one time I took a different approach, and I encourage everybody to do this. The effectiveness of a leader is really determined by the behavior and performance of the followers.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So how do we do that, right? And it sounds so simple, but yet there's so many layers there to get into it. So it's always a pleasure to see everybody, to see you and Cheryl, Jerry, and Josh. It's a pleasure to meet you.
You too.
Okay, brother. Well, Randy, we appreciate it, and we'll see you down the road. Look at
down the road.
And you listen in. Look up this study. If you're a leader, you want to take your company next level. Leadership and culture is where it's at. Okay. And before we go, you know, you've got to, Brad just said something I'm going to put up. You have to sell your business to your employees. You have to make them understand what it's all about. So anyway,
you're exactly right.
Okay. So appreciate you joining us today. Hope this was a time of value for it. And let us know here at CVC Success Group how we can help you take your business to the level that you dream of. We're waiting to hear from you. A conversation doesn't cost you a dime. And with that, we'll see you next time on the next episode of the CVC Home Service Success Network. Thanks for being here. It's an honor